was an unremarkable weekday evening, and my appetite was nowhere to be found as I sat down for dinner. Across from me, my teenage sons, Ryan and Spencer, eagerly devoured their macaroni and cheese. At 15 and 14, their energy seemed boundless, and their plates were always left spotless, a testament to their active lifestyles and endless teenage pursuits. My wife, Kara, occupied the seat at the far end of the table, meticulously ensuring everyone's needs were met. As soon as the boys finished, they bolted outside to squeeze in a game of street hockey before darkness fell. I lingered at the table, nursing the last few sips of my iced tea and building the nerve to address Kara. She was at the sink, focused on washing dishes, when I abruptly stood up and said, "Next time you meet your lover, maybe leave the red dress at home. You looked like a $20 hooker walking into that motel." She didn't respond. Instead, as I walked out the door, the sharp sound of a plate shattering against the floor reached my ears. I spent the next 2 hours mowing the lawn, losing myself in the repetitive hum of the mower. As twilight descended, I reluctantly stopped, though I dreaded going back inside to face Kara. Delaying as much as I could, I cleaned the mower thoroughly, even noticing it was running low on oil, and taking the time to refill it. When I finally tossed the empty oil container into the trash, something unusual caught my eye: a crumpled brown paper bag buried deep in the bin. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pulled it out. Inside was the red dress, along with a pair of red panties. The underwear was stained, and I had no intention of keeping them. I didn't need further evidence. I already knew who was involved. Later that night, Kara had retreated to the bedroom, shutting the door behind her. Oddly, I felt relieved. The tension from earlier left me with no desire to confront her further. It had been a rough day, but in truth, I had sensed something was wrong for months. Kara's behavior had shifted, though I kept dismissing my suspicions, hoping the unease would fade. It only grew stronger. Kara, a dedicated fourth-grade teacher, typically left for work around the same time as the boys. But that morning, she had called in sick, claiming she had an eye exam. As a house painter, I was working on a project in Harrisburg, roughly an hour away, but upon hearing of her unexpected day off, I decided to take one too, keeping it to myself. Painting had been my livelihood for nearly 2 decades, and I enjoyed it. I was good at it, and my earnings had supported Kara through college and sustained our family. Once I believed she valued my work, but her attitude had changed over the years. When introducing me to her friends, she avoided mentioning my job. If the topic arose, her discomfort was plain to see. My career, once respected as the foundation of her education and our life together, now seemed to embarrass her. Meanwhile, Kara's career flourished. She was a well-regarded teacher, earning more than I did and reaping the benefits of a strong union health plan and a growing pension. At 5'1", with striking platinum blonde hair, she kept herself fit and attractive. But her success had come at a cost to us. That morning, I parked a few blocks from our house and waited to see where Kara would go. Eventually, she emerged, wearing the red dress. An odd choice for a simple doctor's appointment. She looked stunning in it, something I had always told her, but I quickly realized she wasn't headed to any clinic. Instead, Kara drove to the Sunset Inn, parked her car, and walked straight to room 304. She knocked twice before entering. That was all the confirmation I needed. At the motel's reception, a $100 bill was all it took to obtain the registration card. The name on it was Jefferson Carter, a familiar face from events Kara had dragged me to. I couldn't recall much about him, except that he was somehow connected to the school district. Jefferson's car was nearby, unlocked. A quick glance in the glove box produced the vehicle registration, confirming his name and address. 405 Clinton Drive, Lancaster. I recognized it immediately. Jefferson was on the Lancaster County School Board and married. That discovery capped off a day I'd rather forget. I spent hours wandering aimlessly before finally heading home. When I walked through the door, Kara greeted me with her usual cheerfulness, the red dress nowhere to be seen. I didn't sleep at home that night. Instead, I parked my truck behind the warehouse where I subcontracted. Still sweaty from mowing earlier, I didn't care. All I wanted was coffee, so I ordered some eggs and toast to go with it, killing time until I was sure that Kara had left the house. I didn't have much in the house that held sentimental value. Gathering my essentials, I stuffed my clothes into a few trash bags and carefully packed my birth certificate, passport, and other important documents. Once everything was ready, I made a phone call. Holly Carter? Yes. This is Felix Foster. We've crossed paths at some school events in the past. I can't say I recall. What's this about? I thought you should know. Your husband, Jefferson, spent yesterday afternoon at the Sunset Inn in Reading with my wife, Kara. The line went silent. I waited for her to respond, but nothing came. That's all I needed to tell you, Mrs. Carter. I'm sorry to bother you, but I couldn't just keep this to myself. Goodbye. 10 minutes later, I was on the road to Colorado, heading to my Uncle Jared's place. Leaving the boys behind was one of the hardest decisions I'd ever made, but I knew Kara could provide for them better than I could. She had the higher income, and despite her betrayal, was the more practical parent. I left no note, no explanation. I figured Kara would put two and two together when she saw my clothes were gone. Around 3 p.m., when the boys would typically be home from school, I called Ryan. His phone was limited to a few preset numbers for outgoing calls, but incoming calls were unrestricted. Hey Ryan, it's Dad. You on your way home? Yeah, why? I wanted to let you know I moved out today. I'm on my way to Uncle Jared's in Colorado for a while. I thought you and Spencer should hear it from me. What? Dad, why did you move out? The short answer is to ask your mother, but that doesn't really cover everything. Your mom seems to think I'm not good enough for her anymore. Maybe she's looking for someone with a better career or more status, I don't know. Either way, I'm giving her space to figure it out. I'll call when I can, but Jared's place doesn't have great reception. Can't you work it out, Dad? What about counseling or something? That's not for me, son. Listen, your mom has a solid job, and she'll have no problem taking care of you and Spencer. I'll try to call again this weekend. Don't tell your mom where I am, or that I called, okay? Take care of your brother and try to keep things calm. I'll be in touch. Bye, Ryan. Bye, Dad. By then, I was already crossing into Illinois. Uncle Jared's home was nestled just north of Raton Pass, in a part of Colorado that felt more like New Mexico. He had a comfortable lifestyle, though I never quite figured out how he managed it. Years ago, he'd caught his wife cheating and kicked her out, so he fully understood my situation. Jared told me I could stay as long as I needed, and he appreciated the company. His property spanned a decent stretch of rugged, barren land, not suitable for farming or ranching. In addition to the main house, there were several barns and corrals filled with horses. Jared boarded them for other people, who mostly came out to ride on weekends, especially during the summer. The rest of the year, the place was peaceful. On Sunday afternoon, Jared and I drove into Trinidad for dinner and to pick up a few essentials I'd forgotten. When my phone finally got a signal, I called Ryan. Hey, son, just wanted to let you know I made it here safely. How are things going on your end? Not great, Dad. I told Spencer everything, and he's furious with Mom. He's not even speaking to her. She won't explain why you left. She keeps acting like she doesn't know. I've tried to get her to talk, but she just shuts down. Spencer and I are keeping our distance from her as much as we can. You seem to be holding up well, Ryan. I'm so sorry you've had to go through all of this. Just keep doing your best. I'll try to call you from Jared's landline since I can't get much cell service out here. Is there anything I can do for you and Spencer? We'll be okay, Dad. One thing was certain about Jared's place. It desperately needed attention. Every building on the property was crying out for a fresh coat of paint. I didn't know how long Jared had lived there, but it was clear no one had taken a paintbrush to the place in years. Looking for ways to help, I headed to the local co-op and bought every 5-gallon bucket of red oxide paint they had, on Jared's tab, naturally. With several months of decent weather ahead, I resolved to repaint the outbuildings before winter arrived. The main house would have to wait for spring. The following weekends passed uneventfully, but I couldn't get in touch with Ryan. Calls to his cell phone went unanswered, and it left me with a gnawing sense of unease. Weeks turned into over a month without any contact. I was almost certain I'd given Ryan Jared's landline number, but doubt began creeping in. Just as I started to truly worry, Jared called me into the house. It's for you, Felix. It's Ryan. Dad, Ryan's voice came through the line. Spencer and I are in Santa Fe. We need you to come get us. Can you make it? What? Santa Fe? How did you even get there? I can't explain right now. I'm borrowing someone's phone and they need it back. We're at the Sky Blue terminal. How fast can you get here? Give me a couple of hours. Grab something to eat while you wait. I'm on my way. 2 hours later, the boys were in the back seat of my truck, heading north with me. They had no bags, and Spencer was fast asleep within minutes. I tried calling you several times, Ryan, I said, breaking the silence. What happened to your phone? Mom found out you'd been calling, he explained. She freaked out, grabbed my phone, and smashed it with a rolling pin. I thought about using the number you gave me for Jared's landline, but I kept putting it off. I guess I just hoped things would improve. And I'm guessing by the fact you're here, they didn't. Not even close. About a month ago, Mom started going out at night. She'd come back after midnight, completely drunk. Some mornings, she didn't even get up for work, and she wouldn't bother calling in. Was she going out alone? At first, yeah, and then she started bringing guys home with her. They were both always hammered. She'd take them to her room and, well, you can imagine the noise we had to deal with. I can. How did you two handle that? The first time, Spencer and I waited for about an hour before sneaking outside and letting the air out of the guy's tires. Then we stayed over at Mr. Price's house. He let us crash in his guest room. The next morning, we watched from his place as the guy realized all his tires were flat. He was furious. It took over an hour for AAA to come fix it. Mom stood on the porch in her bathrobe, but when we got home from school, she didn't say a word. Did that happen often? Just one more time. The next night, another guy came over, so we did the same thing, except this time we cut the valve stems. They had to tow his car away. He was livid. Mr. Price thought it was hilarious. After that, she stopped bringing guys home. Well, at least you put an end to that. Yeah, but she kept going out. Sometimes she'd come back alone in the morning. Other times someone would drop her off. I have no clue where her car ended up. One weird thing, every time she went out, she wore one of those red dresses. She must have bought a bunch of them. At least Spencer and I could finally get some rest. We kept getting calls from the school, though. The district wanted to know why she wasn't showing up. She slept most of the time when she was home. A few days ago, she got fired. Well, not technically. The union wouldn't let them officially fire her, but they've barred her from working. I don't know all the details. I'm so sorry, Ryan. If I'd known things would get this bad, I never would have left you both there. So, how did you end up in Santa Fe? Last night, close to midnight, some guy pulled up and literally kicked Mom out of his car. She stumbled her way to the porch and collapsed. For a moment, we weren't even sure if she was still alive. Her dress was torn to shreds and she looked awful. That's when I realized we couldn't stay there any longer. I told Spencer to call 911 and grabbed her credit card from her wallet. I booked 2 tickets from Philly to Santa Fe online and had them held at the counter. I almost booked Denver, but changed my mind at the last second. Well, it sounds like you managed to pull it off. Yeah, but we had to bend the truth a little. What do you mean? When the EMTs arrived, one of them called the cops after checking Mom. Turns out she had alcohol and cocaine in her system. I didn't even know she was doing coke. Neither did I. The cops started asking a lot of questions, mostly about the car that dumped her off, but we didn't know anything. Then this lady from Family Services showed up and started asking where you were. I told her you were in Colorado and had sent us tickets to join you. I put on my saddest face and told her we didn't have anyone to drive us to the airport. She made a few calls and ended up driving us herself. I guess it was the simplest solution for her, but worked out perfectly for us. Once the boys settled in, Jared and I stayed up late talking about everything. I'd assumed Kara would start divorce proceedings as soon as I left, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Never in a million years did I expect her to spiral into such chaos. Maybe it was pent-up frustrations, or maybe I just underestimated her entirely. I've never been good at understanding why people do the things they do. Jared didn't own a computer, so I spent the next morning making phone calls. I reached a lawyer in Reading who was more than willing to handle the divorce. When I mentioned Kara's name, he seemed familiar with her situation. News travels fast in small towns, especially when the police are involved. He assured me her recent behavior would make the divorce straightforward. His fee was $2,000, which nearly emptied my account, but Jared offered to help financially if necessary. The lawyer even suggested filing for child support since Kara earned more than me, though her unemployment complicated that option. The boys' school staff was sympathetic. They forwarded their records and birth certificates without any hassle, and I told Ryan and Spencer they could take a break from school until everything was sorted out. Over the next few months, things stabilized. Kara signed the divorce papers without resistance, though there was no child support agreement. She'd lost her teaching certification and had to start over in a new line of work, which I assumed was far less prestigious. Meanwhile, Ryan and Spencer adapted quickly to their new school. They had a long trek to the bus stop every morning, which Jared and I called a character-building exercise, as we refused to drive them. Life started looking brighter, as they say. My own silver lining came in late May. Jared sent me on a trip to Cloudcroft to deliver 2 horses to a buyer. It was a 5-hour drive, so I left early, aiming to return the same day. Things didn't go as planned. Dropping off the horses was the easy part. Hauling an empty trailer on the way back was the real hassle. Just outside Alamogordo, I hit a roadblock. A truck carrying undocumented immigrants had overturned, and the area was swarmed with law enforcement and border patrol. They were inspecting every vehicle, especially trailers. By the time I got through the checkpoint, I was desperate for a bathroom break. I pulled over near a billboard and finally relieved myself. That's when I noticed I wasn't alone. 2 figures emerged from the shadows, a woman in her late 20s and a little girl who couldn't have been more than 4. Both looked dirty, exhausted, and scared. I grabbed 2 bottles of water from the cooler in my truck. The woman accepted them cautiously, handing one to the child. The resemblance between them was striking. Long dark hair, heavy eyebrows, and a golden complexion. Neither said a word as I gestured toward the truck, signaling for them to follow me. They hesitated, wary of my intentions, but eventually made their way to the passenger door. The older woman kept her eyes locked on me, her expression a mix of fear and defiance. I knew this was probably illegal, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't align with the law. We drove for about an hour before stopping for gas. As I filled the tank, I pointed out the restroom and they quickly made their way there, returning before I even finished at the pump. Inside the station, I paid for the gas and picked up a couple of pre-made sandwiches and 2 Cokes. Sure enough, they were just as hungry as they had been thirsty, tearing into the food with quiet gratitude. Not long after, we pulled into a Walmart supercenter in Las Vegas, New Mexico. They stuck close as we walked in, their unease still apparent. At the entrance, I asked the greeter for help, and soon we had a shopping assistant, an older woman who spoke Spanish. After I briefly explained the situation, we headed straight for the children's department. The little girl, Ruby, was easy to shop for. Underwear, pants, shirts, socks, all picked out in minutes. The young woman, who introduced herself as Brooke, needed more time. I gave her space while I hung back with Ruby, letting her choose bras, panties, and casual clothes on her own. Once they were finished, we grabbed sneakers for both in the shoe department, then hit the health and beauty section for toothbrushes, combs, and feminine products. Brooke seemed a little shy about the last items, but accepted them gratefully. As we wrapped up, I thanked the Walmart assistant, who surprised me with a hug, a gesture that felt oddly out of place but appreciated. With the entire shopping spree costing under $200, I wasn't complaining. It had been a long day, so I decided to call it a night and get a hotel room. I figured they could use a hot shower and a proper bed, and frankly, so could I. At the hotel, I got a room with 2 beds, placed their new clothes on one, and gestured toward the bathroom. They didn't need any further encouragement. While they cleaned up, I stepped out, called Jared to let him know I'd be delayed, and grabbed a full KFC meal for 3. I left out the details about my unexpected guests. Jared would figure it out soon enough, and I couldn't help but smirk at the thought. When I returned, they were clean and looked much more refreshed. Brooke introduced herself properly, pointing to herself and saying, "Brooke." Then to the little girl, "Ruby," and finally back to me, "Felix." It felt like something from an old Tarzan movie, and we all had a good laugh over it. Dinner didn't last long. We were all starving, and the chicken and sides disappeared quickly. There wasn't much conversation after that. I pointed to one bed for them and stretched out on the other, fully clothed and on top of the bedspread. Brooke seemed comfortable with the arrangement, and they both drifted off to sleep in their new clothes. The next morning, breakfast was simple: McMuffins from a drive-thru. We made it back to the ranch by noon, where Jared's reaction was as I expected, pure amusement. With plenty of space in the house, it was easy to settle Brooke and Ruby into their own room. Jared spoke enough Spanish to piece together their story. Ruby was Brooke's daughter, and her husband had passed away. She was trying to reach her brother, a bricklayer in Alabama. After the truck they'd been traveling in overturned, most of the group stayed behind. Brooke, however, decided to walk away from the chaos, which turned out to be the right choice. Over lunch, Jared officially put Brooke in charge of the cooking, a suggestion that she accepted with a smile. To be honest, I was relieved. Jared's culinary skills left a lot to be desired. When the boys came home from school, they were excited to meet Brooke and Ruby. Their enthusiasm only grew after tasting dinner. I couldn't identify half the dishes she made, but they were delicious, and the boys happily went back for seconds. Before long, Brooke handed Jared a grocery list written entirely in Spanish. We all knew that wouldn't be an issue in Trinidad, and I suspected I'd be picking up some Spanish while helping Brooke improve her English. Of course, with my grammar, her lessons might not turn out any better than mine. Brooke quickly settled into life at the ranch, taking charge of household chores like cooking, cleaning, and laundry. Jared was thrilled to hand over those responsibilities, and Brooke didn't seem to mind. Her English steadily improved, blending into what I came to recognize as Spanglish. She mixed Spanish and English with ease, making herself understood more and more each day. Ruby, on the other hand, picked up English at lightning speed, thanks to her time with the boys and watching TV. Sometimes she'd even translate for her mother, which Brooke found amusing. It was a relief to see Ruby thriving, especially with school on the horizon the following year. The divorce with Kara was finalized not long after, and a few days later, UPS delivered 2 boxes. Inside were the boys' clothes and personal items, including their birth certificates. There wasn't a single thing of mine in there, nor any note or explanation from Kara. While a part of me was curious about how she was doing, I wasn't interested enough to reach out. Brooke noticed how much lighter I seemed after the paperwork was done, and asked Jared about it. After he explained everything to her in Spanish, she walked away with a big smile. That felt like a good sign. Brooke finally contacted her brother after finding his address and phone number. He was relieved to hear from her, though regretful about the time they'd lost. That call seemed to bring her a sense of closure. The boys were becoming skilled with the horses, and once all the buildings were painted, we turned our attention to other repairs Jared had let slide over the years. Slowly but surely, the ranch began to shed its rundown cowboy hangout look, morphing into something closer to a resort. Visitors who boarded their horses with Jared started asking if they could stay overnight at the ranch instead of a motel in town. With plenty of rooms to spare, Brooke thought it was a great idea, especially if she got a cut of the profits. She giggled when she said it, but Jared took her seriously. Soon the ranch offered accommodations with supper and breakfast. Jared got the necessary licenses and installed fire monitors, and within a month, Brooke was running her own little bed and breakfast. A few weeks later, a small article about the Lazy J Ranch appeared in the Santa Fe newspaper. Almost overnight, it became a popular tourist spot. Jared had to buy more horses to keep up with demand, and the ranch even got a computer, which the boys eagerly set up using satellite internet. The winter months brought a slowdown, giving us time to add an extension to the house, creating 4 new guest rooms. Brooke treated herself to a granite chef cooker, Ryan earned his learner's permit, and I stayed busy with painting and repairs. Meanwhile, Jared and the boys handled the horses, and Spencer even started taking reservations for spring through the ranch's new website. He also taught Ruby to read, and we set up accounts with all the major credit card companies. Even during the slow season, we were swamped, leaving us both excited and nervous for the coming year. Brooke often joined me when I was taking a break, sitting quietly by my side. Though we didn't talk much, her presence was always comforting. She made sure I had coffee or whatever I happened to be drinking. Our communication improved over time, but I was still a slow learner when it came to Spanish. Or social cues? Ryan occasionally tried nudging me to be more open with Brooke, but I struggled to take the hint. Right before Christmas, Brooke finally pushed me off the fence. "Felix, I think it's time Ruby had her own bed and her own room, don't you agree?" "Yeah, you're right. We should have done that sooner." "Good, I'm glad you agree. I'm moving my things into your room today, but I need a dresser. Can you move the second one from Ruby's room into yours? It's too heavy for me." "Of course, but, Brooke, there's only one bed in my room." "That's okay. Don't worry, I don't take up much space." Her English was so clear and confident, I couldn't help but wonder if she'd rehearsed the conversation. Part of me suspected Jared or the boys might have been involved, But no matter the case, Brooke had made her point. I felt flattered and honestly relieved. I'd been careful not to do anything that might make her feel uncomfortable or take advantage of her situation, but clearly, she'd figured that out for herself. I wish I could tell you I'd swept Brooke off her feet with romantic gestures, but the truth is I think I fell for her the moment I first saw her. I just couldn't admit it. Not to her and not to myself. It was a relief to know she felt the same and had the courage to act when I couldn't. We were married on Christmas Day, surrounded by family and a few close friends from the area. The following year brought unprecedented success to the Lazy J Ranch. Every room was booked for months in advance, and we found ourselves turning guests away. Brooke hired a young woman to help in the kitchen, and Ryan, much to my amusement, began showing an interest in her. Watching him take those first steps toward adulthood was a bittersweet joy. But the year wasn't without its heartache. At the end of the summer, we lost Jared. His passing left a hole in our lives, though his generosity lived on. He left the ranch along with over $1 million in mineral rights to Brooke and me. His legacy gave us the stability to continue thriving. The boys flourished, Ruby grew up quickly, and life was undeniably good for us. The cold rain dripped steadily as Kara stepped out of Golden Sweet Treats after another grueling midnight to 8 shift. Her hands throbbed from hours spent carefully placing candy eyes on chocolate Easter bunnies. Clutching her tote bag in one hand and her pay envelope in the other, she ducked into a small diner for breakfast. Once seated, she reached into her bag, pulling out a well-worn copy of Celebrity Digest and flipping straight to page 48. As she stirred her coffee absently, her eyes landed on the familiar photo of Spencer, her youngest, helping actress Elena Marlowe onto a chestnut horse. The next page featured Felix standing on the porch of the ranch house, Brooke beside him, smiling alongside Sabrina Hayes. Kara read the article again, despite knowing every word by heart. After finishing the piece, she slipped the magazine back into her bag and opened her pay envelope. She carefully counted the cash, already thinking about the thrift stores that would open in 20 minutes. Maybe today would bring her luck. Even with 16 red dresses hanging in her closet, Kara always felt the pull to add another one. After all, you could never have too many red dresses.